While the fall of Europe to coalition forces became ever more complete, the chosen king battled Carthage as he made his way west. Crippled by a lack of supplies and the huge distance between the front line and the nearest military base, his army struggled to advance even 100 miles in a year, yet advance it did. Some forces were sent out to sea to bypass enemy defences, but the Carthaginians were one step ahead of them.
He is the general with no fame. He is the general with no name. He is the general with no face. He is the general of memory erased. We ride in the name of the chosen king, yet we are fated to be nothing. Around me a cadre of brothers I have, but we cannot rout spears nor even rout jaws. What end will be for me? What life is found aflame adrift at sea? Will the eagle sink or shall it fly? We'll never know, for we shall soon die.
Welcome back to Wings of Eden, where we're once again doing the naval battle that we saw at the end of the last episode. We're just fighting it all over again, only this time we can't retreat. We're still benefiting from the blessings of Ahura Mazda when it comes to these javelins. Our men are magically being protected by the ship's weird hitboxes all over the place, so that's good news at least. Making sure the combats are nice and slow will probably benefit our men, but they're still going to struggle. Our main objective will be to set fire to the enemy transports, but due to some sort of glitch, the fire doesn't show up in the replay for some reason, and I even missed a critical moment right at the start where we set fire to the ship carrying the enemy general. That'll make life a lot easier. We had another big victory towards the start of the fight actually. I managed to get some transports over to the enemy siege ship and board it, so now it's not going to be constantly knocking out our ships as the battle goes on. There was a bit of a fight on the deck of the siege ship, but the ship actually spontaneously combusted. Not that you can tell because the combustion is invisible, but according to the tooltip, this ship is being destroyed. That's a great start to the fight. Elsewhere, our fire archers are doing good work taking out the enemy's heavy infantry where they can. In other cases, it's boarding actions where our heavy infantry are trying to fight theirs, and broadly speaking, we're losing. Our swordsmen are apparently a bit worse than the enemy's spearmen. We keep getting taken out in one-on-one fights. That's a shame, and we are going to lose quite a lot of our melee component in the army to this effect, but we are still inflicting heavy damage on the enemy while they're distracted killing our men thanks to the fire archers. There's also the advantage that as our units get decimated, if one of the ships can sneakily rout away, the entire unit is considered to have survived and we can technically get them back through replenishment. Our fire arrows are still doing good work taking out those veteran troops, and I discovered that our cataphracts can actually shoot fire arrows, which they can't do, I think, in land battles, but in naval battles they can, which is particularly useful. Elsewhere, I have managed to get some melee troops to engage with enemy skirmishing troops on their transport ships. That's a bit more like it. Thanks to the mysterious effect that just kills everyone, we're still going to take losses, but it's hopefully going to affect the enemy more. And in the case of this battle right here, there's another case of spontaneous invisible combustion. This ship is just going to go down, so our men rightly jump away, and that's another victory. No idea why the fire isn't showing up. I've never seen that particular glitch in Attila before, but just adds to the fun. We've still got a couple more skirmishing transports to take down, and this time it's the naval unit type ones that can't be set on fire. We managed to board them with heavy infantry, but like we saw in the past, we get this mysterious deadly effect where both sides are just being mown down, presumably by the fact that their stats are really debuffed by seasickness and it just messes with combat. In this case, we almost cleared the enemy ship out. However, our men routed, and many of them decided to jump overboard at that moment. Not very good. Still, we've got more men nearby who will continue the fight, and as you can see on the balance bar, we are winning the battle overall, so we have a chance of getting rid of enemy units by them just routing due to army losses, and I think this is one of those cases. The thing is, routing causes the enemy ships to set on fire, of course, because who doesn't love a bit of spontaneous combustion, especially the invisible variety. So some of our cataphracts there managed to defeat some enemy skirmishers. Another unit comes right in for the same fight, but then the army losses cause them to rout, they jump overboard, and that's going to be the end of the battle actually. Didn't really show you much of the fighting going on because it was all just a huge mess where everyone was getting killed. There wasn't much to say about it in terms of tactics, but we somehow won. The death of the enemy general and the destruction of the siege ship probably being the most important points. Here's the result. We did lose a few units out there, but the enemy are much worse off, and we will be able to take some replenishment by taking captives that we apparently have somehow. I guess we dragged them out of the water just before they drowned and forced them to join our army. Very good stuff. We're now still set up to go and besiege the nearby Carthaginian city. I'm going to bring the remnants of the army back onto land where they can in theory replenish, although it's hard to replenish here in these desert regions. And failing that, we can levy client state troops to get the army a little bit closer to working order once again. So yes, we're going to go into this siege attack right here. There's a nice full stack garrison inside, so it's going to be a challenging assault. I needed to wait one more turn so my ladders would finish before we do make this attack, so we'll just attend to a couple of other important matters elsewhere before we hit the battlefield.
Virgin Bone Talismans, Contraband, Unauthorized Pandora Idols, Contraband, Stolen Copies of the Sacred Text are Quicktale of Time. Contraband, it is the opinion of the mighty chosen king that you were planning to use dark magic to corrupt the timeline. Please note that such activities can cause grave injury to the performer, up to and including death. Please additionally note that the penalty for attempting such activities is death. In the future, all time manipulation magic must be sanctioned and attended by a member of the chosen king's council. Please proceed to the ditches that have been provided in order to begin the punishment process. Do not hesitate. Most of those who experience death by beheading report that it is relatively painless on account of a compromised ability to process sensations. Please be aware that due to the possibility of blood splattering from the impact wound, all spectators should stand 10 paces away at all times. On behalf of Lady Pandora, I thank you for your cooperation.
I'll be making the attack on the southeast corner of the city, using some arrows there to soften up the one unit sitting on the walls. Behind the gates there are elephants, certainly something to watch out for. In the southwest I've set up for an attack, but we're not going to be making that one. This is our classic distraction, keeping half the enemy army just standing there while we focus down the southeast. We got into a bit of trouble right away, because it looks like the tower was going to set our ladder on fire. It seemed the damage was going up particularly fast, maybe because we're in a desert climate that modifies how quickly it happens. Usually you just somehow get away with avoiding the fires from the tower attacks. Anyway, to counter this, I'm rushing my archers forward to absorb the ballista bolts, allowing the ladder to move up safely. Our ram nearby has moved up to the gates, and while we're taking javelins on the way in, you can see a lot of the javelins are being thrown roughly at the front of the unit, and because of the spread they're just hitting the ram, which doesn't do anything, so that's good. I ordered my archers to try and shoot these javelineers. Since the wall is damaged, their cover is compromised. We should do a bit more damage than usual there. The ram's already done its job and the gate's open, but we're not going in there just yet. We're going to focus on the wall for now. The ladder made it thanks to the sacrifice of the archers, and I'm now doing a similar sacrifice strategy over here to the north, where another ladder is going to sneak up to the northeast corner of the city, using some spearmen to deflect the attacks along the way. The issue we'll have though is that the tower can still see this ladder when it's set up, and because it's trying to shoot at the unit, it ends up setting the ladder on fire as my men are climbing it. This isn't as big a problem as you might think, because in Attila, fire doesn't do any damage, it's just a visual effect, so nobody's burned. And also, unlike in previous Total War games, there isn't any fall damage, so men who fall off the ladder when it gets destroyed just get up and move over to this other ladder I'd already set up and just continue on with their mission without batting an eyelid. Very professional. Up on the wall, it's just a battle with our spears against theirs, and we should win eventually because we'll be able to put more spears locally into the fight. Just going to take some time, of course. We'll have our extra point of entry in the northeast because the ladder plan has been successful and they're not going to be resisted, so we'll quickly take a gate there, although it's in a very annoying position. While we wait for progress to be made, our reinforcements are on the way, but you can see they're already very tired. This is the debuff from our second army under Bakru having no supplies. This debuffs their morale, and there's another debuff to morale from the lack of supplies on top of that, meaning they have pretty much no morale right now and may not be all that useful, but they're coming over all the same. The main threat inside the gate right now is that set of elephants that's just standing ominously. I've put archers up on the wall to try and use fire arrows to kill them, since our archers will be safe up on the wall, the elephants can't get them up there. While I could wait for a long time and try and take them out, I decided to speed things along, for the sake of the battle, by throwing some of my Libyan spears into the gate to see what happens. They immediately start fighting with the enemy's Libyan spears. I think the enemies are a little bit better, but the main threat will still be the elephants who charge into the fight. At least because they have to charge through their allies, their charge is completely negated and some of them won't be able to get into the fighting. That's going to hamper them a lot. And now they're a stationary target right next to my archers. In theory, using the fire arrows will do extra damage to them, and it has the potential to make them run amok as well, but you have to shoot them quite a lot for it actually to happen. Nearby there was a tower disaster. Some reinforcements triggered a tower to be captured and it blew up, killing some of the reinforcements, but it also killed most of the remaining enemies in this section of the wall. You can see them shattering there. The big issue we have now though is that when you destroy a tower, you can't use the stairs to go down off the wall, which I didn't even realise up until this battle. I just somehow hadn't noticed. So this means our men will now run off to some other part of the wall seeking another tower so that they can fulfill their order, which is to just go and stand right below where they were previously. I had some javelin men throwing javs through the gate in the hope of killing some elephants, and this is pretty effective. Javelins are the super hard counter to elephants. Elephants get annihilated by javelins. Just in this case our line of sight isn't very good, so it didn't actually do all that much. Still, our men have now routed and this fight's going to come to an end since the enemy don't want to chase us out of the gate, and the archers will still be firing, potentially doing some damage there. Another disaster occurred when my men seeking to go and use another tower to get off the walls captured it midway through the climb, so we lost another half a unit there, and the survivors now go off to look for another way to get down the walls. Some men already have gotten down, but now the elephants come over to fight over here. The thing is, these elephants are now out of control. They actually started running amok on the way over, so as they go through their own men to get to me, friendly fire is now enabled and they are killing their own side. I thought this is great, they'll just rout the hostile unit and then potentially our spears will bring the elephants down, but it just didn't work out like that. They stopped running amok in the middle of the fight. The enemy spear unit's morale came back somehow, and then they quickly routed my unit. It routed into the enemy and is going to be destroyed, so that's particularly poor. So far our attempts to get some ground in the city have not been successful.
Where have you been? We've been watching the show for hours already. Don't know if you noticed, but when I said you should take some of my camp's supplies, you might have just gone and taken all of it, oh wise king. I heard there are plenty of edible grasses along the road. They keep you cool as you walk, and the locals can use them in an emergency. Clever, don't you think? Clever, but don't taste too kind. The men aren't ready to fight. Oh, but I fear they will have to. My troops are having some difficulties. They say there are monsters in there. As if monsters could really be out in broad daylight. And you see my men up on the wall over there. Whoa, that tower just... What did you order them to do? Ah, not again. No, it's nothing too interesting. It's just, whenever I look at an enemy fortification, it just collapses. I've become too powerful, you see. Yeah, I see. What about our men? There will be more men. Your men, to be precise. Don't worry, I'm going to go for a walk and keep my eyes on the clouds for a while. If you could take this assault on in, I would be very grateful, my son. Don't call me that. If it's die of starvation out here, or take a chance at finding food in there, the boys won't need me to give them orders. Excellent, for soon they shall be without you. What's that meant to mean? Don't die hungry, off you go. Silly man. And to think I wanted him to host my soul. What was I thinking?
Thanks to the rout and eventual defeat outside the city of those elephants, we were able to secure the area around the southeast gate. The enemy counterattacked by sending 2 units of cav, but now we can block the street using some high pacifists, and there's going to be no chance of those cav getting through. Plus, our archers up on the wall can still snipe down at them with impunity, getting extra kills. While that was going on, there was a bit of a disaster. I sent 2 units of spears to pursue some jabs up on the wall, and they ended up fighting over this gatehouse. The towers exploded and we lost both of our units of spears. I guess Manuakapi took a cheeky peek back at the wall as he walked off, and that's another disaster. That's certainly going to hamper our attack, since units who aren't always stuck on very tired are going to be at a premium in this battle. Units that have low stamina essentially can't kill enemies, they can just be there, so it limits what you can do. Now the enemy's second unit of elephants comes over to join the fight near the southeast gate, and we're going to this time rely on all of the archers from Bakru's army, who are just about avoiding routing. Their morale is so low that they can just rout randomly, which is a bit of an issue. But with all of these archers, we can bombard the elephants with tons of fire arrows, plus the archers up on the wall will be doing it as well. I hoped that would take them out, but we're cutting now to a couple of minutes later. This is the conclusion of that fight. It didn't work. In fact, it was our spears that got taken out. The only thing we have going for us right now is the fire arrows did cause the elephants to go out of control, and that means they don't immediately charge in and just wipe out all of our archers, who would probably just rout instantly and then get themselves killed. So that right there was a narrowly avoided disaster. While it doesn't really look like it, we're still in the game. My plan was to bring in javelins to go and take down those elephants. These jav cav aren't going to make it in because they get stuck in the gate and then routed by some spears, but some foot javs get up onto the wall and start throwing down at the elephants, combined with the fire arrows theoretically damaging the elephants, although there's little evidence of that. We now can kill them while they just dither about being out of control. Even though out of control units usually go and attack nearby things, because we've got loads of spread out half-routed guys all over the place, I think they considered themselves to already be in the melee, meaning most of their elephants were standing in the open, not posing much of a threat, and eventually we did kill them all. During that time, Bakru's army moved around the city to start moving towards the victory point. However, the enemy general ended up blocking him. And as I said, with the very tired thing, our men can't really kill enemies in this situation, or at least it takes them a very long time, or we have to wait until the enemy are also very tired. But because the enemy only have a few men, we can bypass them. We surround those enemies and start damaging them with javelins and then almost rout them, while another unit tries to push into the victory point. It's been blocked, meaning it's going to be a while before we get in there, but the idea is there. All of the troops that were distracted away from the battle now come and commit themselves to a fight. They mostly focus on coming to attack our position here at the southeast gate again. We don't have that many troops left over defending this area since I sent so many things to circle around towards the victory point, but all of the archers are still here, and once the enemy are locked down into fights, we'll gradually grind them away. We'll cut again to the end of this fight. Here we are a few minutes later. Both sides have pretty much been defeated. Our melee troops were scant and not very good, so they did all die in the melee. But the attacks from our archers wiped out pretty much all of the enemies as well. There are a few spears left over, but I think I jabbed them to death in a minute. And more importantly, at this stage, our balance bar advantage is so large that we can just win on morale. Our men there pretend to throw javelins at the enemy and they run away. That's the final unit to rout. The battle is over, and you can also see Bakru's army had, by this point, worked its way onto the victory point to get the capture, although we didn't need it in the end. So let's look at the results for a second. We did lose a few units in Manuakapi's army, so he's not going to be very able to fight anymore. That's a big core of his infantry line gone. We'll have to see if we can levy or hire mercenaries to get something to replace that. The enemy army, of course, totally wiped out, and Bakru's army didn't lose any units thanks to not really taking part in much fighting. He's still got no supplies, but we're just going to move on anyway. I think it's a fun handicap to have all of your men always debuffed like that.
You've come a long way, my friend. Your back must ache so. Oh, but you're so young. Perhaps your bones can still regrow. Perhaps they are still fresh. Thank you, my lady. Oh, I am your lady. I am your queen. You are... I did not realize, your majesty. I never knew that Queen Ahuna was so beautiful.
Queen Ahuna does not rule here. She has not ruled here for a generation. I am Alitum, the chosen queen, if you will. In the absence of my brave husband, I am the perfect woman to accept your surrender.
Yes, your majesty. I'm sorry that things got out of hand. We never meant for there to be a war.
Quiet now, my boy. You do not need to apologize. You only need to make your mark on the contract.
I cannot read this, your majesty.
There are few who can, and yet your surrender requires it, so you shall obey. Your body will not make it back to your family from all the way out here before it rots, remember?
This coalition, is it really going to prevent all wars?
Yes, of course it will. But they'll be fighting aplenty, I assure you of that. We must have sport, and we must have a steady supply of tribute, for men and gods alike. War is peace, that's what people are saying these days.
Off in a forgotten corner of the map, some very important work is being done. One of our clone armies manages to take down the Sarmatian rebels who reappeared to do their dark magic and corrupt my save file. They were destroyed, annoyingly lost some cataphracts along the way, but doesn't really matter. We'll give this territory to someone else, and our brave guardians of Pandora will return to the steppe to await any more appearances. Although at the time of recording this now, the game has actually been patched, so it shouldn't be an issue anymore. Now we're going to take a look at the very beginning of a big fight for Manui Capi. You can see I had him besieging the next Carthaginian town along the coast. Carthage appeared with an army, but because it landed on a beach behind Manui Capi, when I retreat from that battle, I retreat the wrong way. We end up going deeper into enemy territory, encountering more reinforcements, and we're thrown into the same battle again, but harder, so that's not very nice. Looks like we're going to have to fight a difficult one here. Since this was a major battle that took a long time, there's not much point going into the details here. I'll just show you a few bits from the opening of the fight, and we'll look at it for real next time. The enemy army came at us in a not particularly compacted formation, just throwing units up the big hill towards my little formation in the corner. In comes some skirmish cav. They're going to have a hard time fighting my line of archers, and they're very easily driven away. In particular, I've set up all of my archers on the edge of a tree line, the ideal situation for archery, because the hitboxes on the trees will sometimes block projectiles coming in, and they tend not to block them going out quite as much. Here's a bit of an example. They send up some javelineers to fight with us, but the volley of javelins doesn't wipe out our archers like they usually do, and you can see a little bit of an example of something being blocked right there, right through a tree. That was a powerful throw from the enemy. The return fire gets rid of that skirmishing unit, and that's the end of that, but plenty more skirmishing units are now setting up for a bigger, more protracted skirmish. We've also got more horse skirmishers on our flank, just annoying us. I'm roughly ignoring them. Speaking of ignoring, actually, at this point in the battle, I was trying to micro some of my skirmishers to focus down the enemy javelineers, and I didn't even notice this cavalry charge coming in on my right flank. I don't have the archers on skirmish mode, so I immediately lose a unit of archers to that cavalry charge. We just got wiped out, and a few survivors then walk away. This guy's storming off in a huff. He really wishes I was paying attention. At least now the cavalry are fighting with the spearmen who are immediately behind them, so we'll be able to damage the cav as well. But that's exactly the sort of start we don't want for a difficult battle. Looks like things are about to get started for real now, so we'll check back in and see how this one plays out in the next episode. Thank you for watching this episode, and very special thanks to all Officially Devon patrons. Our royal family is going to be thrown into chaos when the Queen, who technically rules our faction, dies in the next part of Wings of Eden.